Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Global People's Assembly. This is the opening session. Let's start with the explanation of the interpretation so that everybody can follow. Dipanshu, can you explain in English and Hindu?
Hi all, welcome to the Global People's Assembly. We have the interpretation option available over here, so I'd be just explaining the Hindi part of it. हमारे पास हिंदी भाषा में भी वार्तालाप यहाँ पे मौजूद है. आपकी स्क्रीन के नीचे एक गोलाकार तरह का आइकन दिखेगा. अगर आप उस पर क्लिक करेंगे तो आपको हिंदी चैनल में जाने का उसमें ऑप्शन मिल जाएगा, जहां से आप सारी वार्तालाप हिंदी में सुन सकते हैं. यदि आप सिर्फ इंग्लिश में ही सुनना चाहते हैं तो आपको इंग्लिश चैनल के ऊपर क्लिक करके रखना पड़ेगा, जिससे आपकी सारी जो वार्तालाप है वो आप इंग्लिश चैनल में सुन सकते हैं. धन्यवाद. थैंक यू.
Thank you very much, Dipanshu, and also thank you to the interpreters. That's very important. It's good to see people joining from all over Asia mainly, because we will have the Asian Assembly soon. Before we want to officially welcome and open the Global People's Assembly, so we come together as civil society, as people's representatives during the People's Assembly at the UN General Assembly High-Level Week. Today and the next days, the presidents and prime ministers will meet in New York and speak in the UN General Assembly. And we come together for 3 days, today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, to hear from voices from around the world about the situation, people's situation, and also we will formulate a declaration with our recommendations towards the UN and towards the governments meeting at the UN. So this is a bottom-up process. So we have regional People's Assembly, but first we have local, constituency, and then national People's Assemblies. This year in 27 countries. There are 7 in Asia, 15 in Africa, 5 in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 1 in Europe. So all of them will happen during this Global Week of Action, Act for SDGs. And they come together in regional assemblies basically today. So we have the Asian Assembly afterwards, then the European Assembly, afterwards the African Assembly today, and this evening the Latin American and Caribbean Assembly. So we will also have thematic sessions. We will have constituency sessions like of women and communities discriminated by work and descent. Also other groups like older people, young people join together. And then we also will have the declaration process during these 3 days. So we will end with the Global Justice March on Thursday at 2 p.m. GMT. So you're all invited to this Global Justice March, where we will launch the declaration, and we will have the opening plenary today at 1 p.m. GMT. So we will show the program a little later, but now I'm happy to invite Becky Malay from GCAP Philippines, who was the GCAP co-chair of GCAP Global before, to officially open the Global People's Assembly. Over to you, Becky.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Greetings from the Philippines. My name is Becky. I'm the Philippine convener of GCAP and the former global co-chair, as Ingo has said. I'm very happy to see that our goal to provide a platform for civil society organizations and communities for their advocacies has already broadened, even through the times of the pandemic. It was in Berlin in March 2019 when we toyed with this idea in GCAP that we hold an assembly parallel to the UNGA, because we have always been restricted or denied access to the UN, especially during the UNGA week, right? So we felt that we are not being heard, our voices are not being being muffled through the formalities of the General Assembly, and our critical calls for urgent and decisive actions on climate, financing, and human rights are being set aside in the intergovernmental negotiations. And so we dared. We had our assembly with hundreds of organizations representing thousands of local constituencies signing up. We did not even have the money to organize all of this, but people signed up and people contributed. So after annually meeting in regionals and in the HLPF in July, we felt that we have built enough networks and alliances that will collectively call for more critical analysis and radical changes, where the voices and faces of those who are left behind are actually heard and seen. The UN is, after all, built by the people. So we started the People's Assembly in 2019 at the first SDG Summit. On to the next one in 2020, online, again online in 2021, and here to today, online again in 2022, but with a lot more constituencies, a lot more CSOs, and broader constituencies of NGOs participating. On to the next one in next year's summit of the SDGs. We are in a worse off situation where the earth is burning and has reached the critical 1.5 degree threshold, with more people who are poor and the inequalities are more stark. As peoples, we have solutions. As communities, we have the power. So our global centralized, decentralized actions give meaning to glocal, to the word glocal, and collectively and universally, we are taking the power in our hands. This is the time to take the power in our hands, people. It is time to build and claim a better world for our future generation. Let us work with the young people to find ways to communicate our harsh realities more effectively. Let us convince more allies in local governments, because the solutions are there, so that they can allocate budgets for sustainable development programs, projects. No? These are very important. Let us work at the global and at the local level simultaneously. Let us talk to parliamentarians to have more policies that favor our advocacies, our desire for a more sustainable and equitable world. I guess too much work is being put on our end, responsibilities are put on our shoulders, but collectively we can do that. So I believe that this is something we can carry on. Let us not allow all the problems in the world to stop us from doing what we need to do, because we can do it. So the time is now. So see you later in the other sessions. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Becky. So yeah, I think this was a good start and gave us a framework. We will now start with the Asian Assembly. Just to explain, we also invited colleagues from the Pacific Islands, but we didn't find any speaker. unless there's anybody from the Pacific Islands here who would like to say a few words. So yeah, otherwise we are a bit early, but I hope it's okay. Pradeep, if I can, if you can take over for the Asian Assembly.
Okay, colleagues, thank you. We will be starting, we're supposed to start in 3 minutes, but we can still, I can still introduce. Give me a little time. Okay. I would like to wait 1 or 2 minutes so that people can join. Yeah. Okay, we can still start. Thank you, colleagues. Thanks, Ingo and Becky, for giving a good start to the Global People's Assembly. Colleagues, we will start now the Asia Regional People's Assembly, which is part of the Global People's Assembly. This is something Ingo told, but who are joining afresh for the Asia People's Assembly. Let me tell that we have been doing this People's Assembly for last 4 years. We will have the National People's Assembly in 28 countries. In Asia, we are doing it in 7 countries. Regionally, we'll be doing it in Asia, Africa, Europe, and Latin America. And global is doing, we are doing the Global People's Assembly from 20 to 22nd. Asia Regional People's Assembly is part of it. Becky told, I will reiterate it. The whole idea of doing this People's Assembly is bring forth the issues and concerns of the most marginalized communities. Different. This is also a parallel process to the UN General Assembly, where we will bring these issues of people in forms of demand charter and put it forward to the people's representatives, members of parliament, UN systems, and all. So briefly, let me also touch upon the various issues which are affecting our region, where we're living in a world, we cannot isolate ourselves as Asia, but in Asia for sure, there are some issues which are affecting us too much. For rising poverty and hunger, which was there already during the pandemic, but post-pandemic, it's coming in various reports. You know, South Asia is always a hunger pocket of the world. We are seeing hunger around us, and this has been increased, exponentially increased during and after the pandemic. The issues of climate impact, we can see clearly in Pakistan. We are seeing it across the region, but we can clearly this time around, we can see it in Pakistan. 1/3 of the country has engulfed under flood. You cannot call this as a natural disaster. These are all man-made. And we can see a continuous human rights violation, which were increased during pandemic, during restrictions. Some of the restrictions were reasonable, some were definitely not reasonable, unreasonable. And finally, the issue of vaccine inequality. This is something which has affected the whole global South. The vaccines were produced by the rich countries, India and China also produced it. But there are restrictions. We continued as civil society demanded. India and South Africa demanded it in WTO, that waive of the trade-related intellectual property rights over the vaccines, so that we moved to a phase of mass production and distribution. This was blocked by the rich countries for 2 continuous years. And this led to the vaccine inequality. Global North was way ahead of us. That resulted huge loss of lives in global South. And that's something which is not acceptable for people like us. The final agreement which they accepted in the WTO is very minimalist in approach. That is, for sure, is not a full TRIPS waiver, it's just a patent waiver. The technical issues involved, we do not understand full of it. But what we understand is it is not going to address vaccine inequality. It is not going to give us mass production and distribution of vaccines. Not only vaccines, we have been demanding vaccines test and treatment. It's a humanity should take preference over profit. Unfortunately, the pharma companies backed by the rich countries have preferred profit over people. So colleagues, I'll quickly introduce you to the program very quickly. We will have very less time in hand because just after us, we'll have the European People's Assembly. So we cannot also overrun. So colleagues, we will start with the community voices. We'll have 4 community voices who will be speaking their issues and concerns, and they'll state their demands. Then we will have members of parliament, honorable member of parliament from Bangladesh, Mrs. Aruma Datta is already here. We'll also be joined by Dr. Amar Patnaik, a member of parliament from India. I think our colleague Hitomi from UNESCAP is already here. So they'll be responding to the issues and concerns which are raised in the first session. Then after that, we'll break us out in 5 thematic sessions: right to health, privatization of health, vaccine inequality, then food hunger and income inequality, then universal protection, social protection, and right to public services, then democracy and civic space, human rights, and then climate justice, disaster risk reduction. So in 5 themes, we'll create 5 groups, parallel groups. The civil society members, all participants will be distributed in these 5 groups as per your choice. But we assigned moderator and rapporteur for each of these themes. So in these groups, we'll discuss the issues, concerns, but more importantly, bring forth the demands, which will eventually be fed into making a demand charter. This breakfast session will end after for 20 minutes. It will discuss, and then they will present in the plenary. All the rapporteurs of 5 groups will present. Then we thank by Jia Graman. Colleagues, the Asia Regional People's Assembly is organized by 20 colleagues, 20 members coordinated by GCAP. It will be pertinent to name them: Global Call to Action Against Poverty, Asia Dalit Rights Forum, the Inclusivity Project, Asia Civil Society Partnership for Sustainable Development, Asia Democracy Network, Asia Development Alliance, Action Aid India, People's Vaccine Alliance, Asia Chapter, Oxfam Asia, South Asian Alliance for People's Poverty Eradication, Wadana Todo Abhiyan NGO Federation of Nepal, Philippines Rural Reconstruction Movement, Noakhali Rural Redevelopment Society, Pakistan Development Alliance, One Singapore, Africa Japan Forum, Coordination Committee of Cambodia, Action Aid International, Asia Region, Aided Action International. So we'll also be supported by interpreters in Hindi. So colleagues, I'll now give floor to Sandeep Chachra, the Executive Director of Action Aid India, to do the first session. Who will have the community voices. Sandeep, before you take it, just to inform you, colleagues, it's been very difficult to get the community voices. People are living in the area where we do not have internet connectivity. We cannot connect them through Zoom. So we have tried to take some videos. You know, people are also camera shy. They cannot speak like us for long hours. So kindly bear with that. Sandeep, over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you, Ingo and Becky, and thank you to all the organizing partners, comrades and colleagues, honorable member of the parliament, honorable members of the parliament who are going to be joining us. Some are here. Miss Aruma Datta, I can see her here. So greetings to you from across the border, but also all the others who are joining in. I can't see everybody, but my warm-hearted greetings to all of you. I'm Sandeep Chachra. I work with Action Aid Association, and it's a singular privilege today and a singular honor, Pradeep, for being part of this opening session, which I think is the most crucial session, where we are going to hear leaders from within communities coming up shortly. So I'm very excited. Friends, as Pradeep was saying, it's a very difficult time in our world. We are not, I must say that we're not completely out of COVID. Some people say COVID is in hibernation. But yeah, we are not completely out of COVID. We have seen the devastating impact of COVID in the last 2.5 years in different waves. We have an ongoing war going on. It doesn't seem to end. We have a climate crisis. You were mentioning Pakistan, but elsewhere in Asia Pacific or elsewhere in the world, people are being forced to flee and migrate. So it's a huge loss and damage impact that vulnerable communities are facing. We have rising unemployment in most of our countries. We have issues with spiraling food prices, give it international trade, call it war, call it the impact of climate, spiraling food prices, hunger, unemployment rising up. So in short, we are communities in great distress. The majority is in our countries across the span that we have here today. If you take the majorities, the working classes, the small peasants, the landless people, the women of the world, they are in great distress at this time. And it is in this time that we are having this very important Asian People's Assembly. Friends, I work with ActionAid Association, and over the last 2.5 years, I have been part as ActionAid of working in several hundred districts of India, in my country, India, responding to COVID, responding to the devastation of COVID, not just on the health front, but on the jobs front, on the work front, on the livelihoods front, on hunger front as well, and our response is ongoing. And I must say, devastated as we all were, it is during this time in the last 2.5 years, just to re-emphasize, what we saw was great resilience, great courage of conviction, great leadership of communities, of our health workers, of our para workers, of community leaders themselves, of doctors and nurses, of the public health officials, but also of the most impacted who actually, without care or caution, came out to defend their neighbors, came out to defend their communities. So it is in this context, and I'm glad that our colleagues and the organizing panel members and all the organizations accepted our idea to open this session in deference to, in celebration to the leaderships of communities who stood tall and who continue to stand tall and send messages to their governments of what to do and how to do things with reference to pandemics, but not just on pandemics, on community-based solutions. We saw a whole range of community social justice and health defenders step out. A rising tide, a rising surge of hope is what I would call it. We have very limited time. I am told by the design of the session that we have 25 minutes, given that it's back to back. And it's in this 25 minutes, friends, we'll try and do our best with reference to hearing the leadership of communities. And let me not delay any further, but take this privilege and this honor of inviting Ms. Suntali Maya Chipang. Ms. Suntali ji, आप अगर हैं कॉल पे तो कृपया करके मैं तो हिंदी में ही बोल पाऊंगा. I will only be able to speak in Hindi, but if you are there, please make your intervention. Or to all other respondents who are going to intervene, leaders, please tell us where you are in the context of human rights situation, where you are in the context of COVID, where you are in the context of vaccination. But also, friends, what are your demands and solutions and agendas going forward? So with folded hands, I will request Ms. Suntali ji, Maya ji, Ms. Suntali Maya Chipang ji to please, she'll speak in Nepali, friends. I hope she's connected, Pradeep. And then I'll request Sri Ham Bahadur, who's here. I saw. Namaste, Ham Bahadur ji. Ramro Ham Bahadur ji. आप उसको अंग्रेजी में थोड़ा उसके बाद में बता देंगे. Ham Bahadur ji, friends, is the director of NGO Federation of Nepal, a very, very key person in the civil society context of Nepal. तो मैं सबसे पहले आमंत्रित करूंगा सुनताली जी को. आप अपनी बात 2-2.5 मिनट में कृपया रखने की कोशिश करें. धन्यवाद. Suntali ji, आप हैं?
She's asking that can she speak a little later? She's trying to connect.
ठीक है, तो मैं आमंत्रित करूंगा अगर हैं लंचन जी, लंचन गुलजी जी.
I'll run that video.
Miss Lanchan Gulji is going to run the video. She's going to speak on the video. Pradeep already said it's difficult to connect. So if Pradeep, the video is ready. Miss
Yes.
Lalchan Gurji is a Dalit and women's rights activist from Pakistan, and we'll hear from her sets of issues and what she's doing with reference to that. Over to you to run the video, Pradeep.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we can. So please run it.
क्या है जी? लाचा घर वालों गुलची। तो आपने जो है आपकी उम्र कितनी है? 30 साल। और आपने टीका क्यों नहीं लगवाया? बड़ी पेटा था बच्चा पेट था इसलिए आपने जो है ना टीका नहीं लगाया। तो आपने नहीं लगाया, डॉक्टर ने नहीं लगाया? डॉक्टर वो लगाया था कि खराब होगा। डॉक्टर ने कहा कि खराबा होगा इसलिए जो है ना मैं टीका नहीं लगवाती आपको ना, इसलिए। ओके ठीक है। तो अभी आपने नहीं लगवाया अभी तक भी ना? बच्चा कितने महीने का हो गया? साल का बच्चा हो गया, अभी तक दूसरा टीका मतलब एक भी टीका आपको नहीं लगाया? बाकी जो पेट वाले टीके जो लगते हैं बच्चों के में वो लगवाए हैं ना? वो भी नहीं लगवाए? अच्छा ठीक।
So that's a short message.
Yeah, that's a short message, and I think to give more light to it, I'll invite Mr. Vinay Raj of the Asia Dalit Human Rights Forum. Vinayji, if you're there, would you tell us about the situation in Pakistan in the context of flood, but also in the context of vaccination? That's what she was speaking to. If you can turn on your speaker, Vinay. Vinay, can you hear us? You might need.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. The video that we have just played is shared by the Center for Law and Justice. So this is Lanjan Gulji's case, but this is not a case in isolation. She represents many Dalit women from Pakistan who has not received even the first dose of the COVID vaccine. This is especially when the authorities in Pakistan claims that they have initiated a door-to-door campaign to reach out to each and everyone, and also they have fully vaccinated around 60% of the total population. The most affected and those who have not reached out are the communities discriminated on work, including the Dalits in Pakistan. They belong to the scheduled caste and a section of the Christian faith who work as sanitary workers, and another section of Muslims, including the fishermen and certain specific castes, and also a newly converted groups. So the Dalits are present in all 4 provinces in Pakistan, but they are in concentration in mostly in the 2 provinces of Punjab and Sindh, which while the official figures state that there are around 2 million or 1.2% of the total population are Dalits, the Dalit rights activists say that they are really undercounted. They believe that Dalits in Pakistan comprises to around 3 to 5 million. So Dalits in Pakistan are largely landless, disproportionately affected by bonded labor. This includes women and children largely. They are time and again facing the situational crisis, discrimination, and exclusion. The relief and financial services are not reaching to them, and we can say that it's almost non-existent for them because Dalits in Pakistan lack the basic document, the computerized national identity card. This forms the primary legal identification document for any Pakistani citizen who are entitled to the access to right, benefit, and responsibility. How and why they are excluded, the Dalits. The majority of the Dalits who live in the remote places are excluded from this process. So do the access to vaccine as well. And the government or any other agency are not taking any specific interest, though they claim that they do door-to-door campaign and try including the most marginalized community. So what the impacts which are quite wide-ranging and multi-dimensional. So the demand that we would try to raise is to include the CDWD, including the Dalits when it comes to access to healthcare, employment, income, food security, especially when a country like Pakistan is going through flood and severe weather challenges. The capacities of Dalit women to cope up with this pandemic and related economic crisis in Pakistan. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. That was a very good context for friends who are from afar. The lady who was speaking represents the intersectionality of caste, class, and of course, this whole question of patriarchy, which Vinay was talking to. So that is where she is located sociologically in the context of Pakistan or in the context of India or in the subcontinent in this South Asia in general. So thanks for that, Vinay, for the moment. And may I now, without waiting, friends, we're running. So without waiting now, have another privilege to invite Miss May Sabe Few. I hope I am pronouncing your name correctly, Miss May Sabe Few. May is the Director of Gender Equality Network in Myanmar, and you'll be very interested to hear from her. May represents, the network represents over 100 civil society formations. It's a network which works on ending discrimination against women in general, but also particularly among religious and ethnic minorities. May works on prevention of violence against women, law reform, and women's engagement to bring peace. So may I invite you, May? She's going to speak in English. So may I invite you, May, to make your contributions for the next few minutes, 4 minutes, because there's no translation time really needed. So please welcome Miss May.
Thank you so much. Good day to you all. Thank you for this opportunity to present the severe issues and challenges are being faced by Myanmar. So the coup attempted by the military to take over the country has so far failed. And almost immediately, the people took to the streets, banging pots and pans every night in protest of the coup. And a civil disobedience movement, a loose coalitions of those brave enough to protest. The loss of their fledgling democracy saw nearly all civil servants leave their jobs to join the protesters. 60% of the civil disobedience movement are women from the social services and the education service sector. And human rights lawyers and activists cannot care for their clients as they are continually under threat of forced arrest or worse. So most people continue to non-violently resist the junta. This will surely lead to even more conflict as now people are taking up arms and joining the People's Defense Force, and this will surely lead to even more conflict as people are trying to defend their home and loved ones against unjustified, violent, carnage, and war crimes. So following the attempted coup in February 2021, the military seized the COVID vaccines and took over the distributions. They weaponized the distributions that last year, tens of thousands of people died from COVID, and many others stand in line to buy the increasingly few oxygen tanks to give some relief to their loved ones. The military are employing their famous four-cut strategy, choking off the supply of money, getting military intelligence, recruiting new soldiers, and controlling distributions of food and medicine supplies. So human rights violations continue to rise, and these heinous crimes committed against innocent people guilty only of participating in their right to peaceful protests are akin to war crimes, crime against humanity. Sexual violence is committed against women and some men, and it's used as an interrogation technique against women, men, and LGBTQIs. So today, Myanmar faces many, many complex issues. I offer up the following examples. 14.4 million people in humanitarian need, 5.4 million people without access to education, 2.5 million people with health issues, 2 million people malnourished, 13.2 million people are suffering food insecurity. People face daily elevated amounts of domestic conflict, electricity outages, and persistent disruptions to logistics and the financial sector. Some think that some people seem not to be aware of is that the Myanmar matter doesn't just matter to Myanmar. This is a regional security matter, actually, which threatens to destabilize the entire region. Myanmar is geopolitically and strategically critical to the area, and what happens in Myanmar doesn't stay in Myanmar. It will impact the area which is just now recovering from the pandemic and economic downturn suffered worldwide. Yesterday, military staged airstrikes against an elementary school in Depayan Township, killing 7 children under 10 and injuring many. Yes, I have read the many letters from diplomatic officers with words of concern and the vow to stand with Myanmar. It is long past the time for words. It's time for action. So I would like to appeal to the ASEAN People Assembly to work with Myanmar civil society organizations and pro-democracy people organizations to show your solidarity, support us with know-how on political mobilizations and nonviolent actions. Help pressure Myanmar's neighboring governments to be tolerant of refugees from Myanmar and provide humanitarian access through neighboring corridors. Increase people-to-people connections through joining campaigns and joint actions for Myanmar pro-democracy forces. Thank you.
Thank you, May, and thank you. Indeed, Myanmar lies heavy on the conscience of all progressive thinkers, people, activists of the world, our governments. Thank you for sharing very eloquently where the issue stands and how delayed it is. Many of us as civil society organizations, including the one I work with, are trying to offer full solidarity, but I think it needs, as you rightly said, much more powerful response from all of us as citizens of this world. We work with refugees from Myanmar, of course, in the northeast of India. One can see stories of horror being recounted there, apart from the little that we do of humanitarian work. Thank you for raising so forcefully this agenda in the context of COVID. So there is a lot of devastations there, and this is the big one that you spoke of, and many smaller devastations go on, as you rightly said. Without waiting more, I would now want to request Pradeep for a video message. Our next speaker is going to deliver a video message. She's from India. She is Miss Mamta Sahu. Miss Mamta Sahu is actually a woman in bondage. She has been rescued by an organization called Aid at Action, one of ActionAid's elder sister organization. So we'll hear her. She'll speak in Odia or in Hindi, mixed. And then we'll have Mr. Umi Daniel, the director of Aid at Action, contextualize and explain her inputs. So over to you, Pradeep, to run this video of Miss Mamta Sahu. She's a migrant worker, and probably she's also going to touch on COVID. Over to you, Pradeep, for that video. I'm sorry, this is Jayanti Manji, so it's probably the video we're playing. Go ahead.
शास्ति दला के ससे दुख सुख के हमके हॉस्पिटल नहीं स्वापिला के बांधी को रखु थिला केन को पटे नहीं दोथी केन भाटी के देखा जा करी जेवा के भी नहीं पटो थई हाट बाजार गले भी सांगे जाई किना सांगे आसे बहुत कष्ट हमें चलनु टैक्स रो आया माने हमको आनी करे आला पड़े हमके ता भल मन बुझले आर पैसा कतर 20,000 लाखा भी देले और यहाँ ते का भी जन कहां संगठन करो काना करो बोली कि ना पहला बेले भी हमें इनो फिर काम धाम नहीं मिलला बिल को फिर हमें दादन होती जो आई हमने मना कले कि हमरो चलबार बुलबार असुविधा खूब होची
Shri Umi Daniel, Mr. Umi Daniel, if you're there, if you can please now take over and contextualize and explain a bit about what Damayanti Sahu, she's not, she was just speaking about. Umi, over to you. Mr. Umi Daniel, are you listening?
Unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Sandeep.
Hi.
And friends, it's wonderful to be here in this forum. What Jayanti has said, that's a voice that we keep hearing from many parts, I think, in South Asia, where the women want to go migrate for work, the dignified work, because they migrate because of various reasons, I think, because of poverty, unemployment, because of natural disaster. So various push factors which are affecting migration, but sometimes they fall into human bondage. Human bondage is a major issue that modern slavery is a huge issue now the world is facing, and particularly the South Asia, which is the poor people are falling into the debt trap, and they're falling into the unscrupulous people who take them for work and they exploit them. Jayanti is one of the voices that we see within the country when they go from one place to another place. They have to face this kind of problems. And here Jayanti says that how her torments, how she faced even bondage, because she migrated with the children, and the children were kept hostage so that they would work there and they cannot escape. And we know, I think we have rescued 1,200 such bonded laborers, and many of them found the government support. Government of Orissa has provided them the support. But yes, that cannot continue forever, because they are the people also, they are re-migrating, falling back to the same kind of drudgery and same kind of problem. Because the COVID has actually aggravated their life. After COVID, we found many such people who were rescued. Again, they went back. Again, they're migrating back. So it's a major issue. The larger coalition that
may I request those who are not speaking to mute themselves? May I request people to mute themselves, those who are not speaking? Umi, please continue.
Thank you very much. So their voices are important because they're unable to reach out. Those people who are invisible, migrant workers, informal worker, engaging in different sector. We know the brick making sector is one of such sector, the construction sector, and other sector. Today also they're facing the same problem because we don't have the policies. We have a policy on bonded labor, but it's not implemented properly in India. In many places, we don't have this policy. We need a stronger kind of policy which will protect the poor people's rights, and also they will have a dignified work, and their rights are protected. Basically, like the large number of people, I think more in a tribal area that we see today, and I know with the earlier organization Action Aid also they found out many such bondage situations in tribal area, where people are bondage for years together. The time has come, I think the Bonded Labor Act and how the people would be released, this act could be implemented properly in India and also in South Asia. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Umi, for contextualizing and also putting in perspective what's going on and how people in bondage, people in slavery are impacted despite and in spite of the laws, protective laws that some countries have enacted. Without taking break, I would like to check back if Ms. Suntali is back. Suntali ji, aap kya jude hain? Hum Bhandari ji kya Suntali hai? Mr. Hum Bhandari? So can I turn over for Suntali's intervention, please, Mr. Hum Bahadur? Mr. Hum Bahadur,
whom will speak because she couldn't join? Whom can speak for her?
So can I? Yeah. So I was just going to say that. So can Mr. Hum Bhandari, who's the executive director of the NGO Federation of Nepal, if you're there, sir, would you like to make an intervention because Suntali ji is not being able to be connected? in place of her, if you can explain. Mr. Hambhandari.
Hello, yes.
You can
Namaste, everyone. Namaste, ma'am. Yes, she was really trying to get connected, and maybe she will get connected very soon. But because it's her time, I can just explain what she just talked to me, and what. So Suntali Maya Chepang is from a marginalized community in Nepal called Chepang. The Chepang population is just below, just around 68,000 in Nepal, and she's from Raksirang rural municipality in Nepal. She says that the people of her village have to cross a river and have to walk 3-4 hours from her place for the vaccination. And she said that there is a lack of health awareness in her village, and people actually do not know why they should really go for the vaccination. In her community, the people when the people were infected with coronavirus, they were treated with discrimination. She said that when her 12-year-old son contracted coronavirus, neighbors really discriminated, and they just tried to get away from them. So even after people walked for 3-4 hours, they had to again wait for 3-4 hours for the COVID-19 vaccination. So in this case, many older people and people with disabilities are being excluded from the COVID-19 vaccine. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I just summarized what she said.
Thank you, Hambhandari ji. Thank you for that. We are going to miss her speech, Suntali's speech, but you've done more than enough to tell us where she comes from and what's the context and what kind of vulnerabilities her community is in, apart from her individual self. Friends, I'm going to hand it over to, we do not have time for discussion. There's one request from the participants. Ms. Pamila Bhatti from Pakistan wanted to briefly, if ma'am, if you can share in a minute, you wanted to add to the situation of what the lady from Pakistan was saying earlier. If you would like to add in a minute about the household survey you've mentioned, if you're there, Ms. Pamila Bhatti. Ms. Pamila Bhatti, please, ma'am, please unmute yourself. If you can make your intervention in about a minute and a half, please. हाँ जी, आप अगर 1 मिनट में बोल देंगे, 1-1.25 मिनट में, मैम, टाइम का थोड़ा है. Please, you wanted to speak on the household survey.
Thank you so much. Actually, the video that was shown was sent by us. I want to explain this video and also household survey. Yes.
Thoda, please, if you can quickly tell us.
Yes, yes.
We are late in the other session.
Lachan was explaining that she was pregnant, so did not get vaccinated. The second thing is,
we've lost your voice,
yes.
Please. We've lost your voice,
Yes,
please.
yes.
Please.
And I want to.
Ma'am, we've lost your voice. Hello, Pamela ji, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
Sandeep, I think we should go to the next.
Okay, I will.
I want to share my experience. We have done 50 household survey. Yes, and each family have 4, 5, and 6 members, and 2 or 3 people in each family.
No, we'll take your points later. We have a discussion time coming up. So, मैं आपसे गुजारिश करूंगा
among the people who did not get the vaccine, the first reason was because, yes.
Pradeep ji, I can't hear her. I
No,
can't hear her.
we also
We
can.
can ask her
Hello?
later. आप
Yes,
कृपया बाद में बोले, आवाज स्पष्ट नहीं आ रही है, रुक रुक के आ रही है और we are running late, तो मैं आपसे बाद में गुजारिश करूंगा. So friends, the way this program is designed, we've heard some voices, selected voices interpreted as well by others, social organizations in those respective countries. We have another session coming up where the esteemed members of the parliament and the representative from the UN are going to tell us how they see this situation and what would be their response to this situation. And I, in this context, would like to thank you sorry, my apologies if I rushed you, but would like to thank you and hand it over back to Mr. Pradeep for the conduct of the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandeep, for this. Cannot waste more time. Over to Becky. Becky, all our two members of honorable members of parliament are here, also joined by colleague from UN ESCAP, Hitomi. So please take it forward.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Sandeep, for the excellent inputs from people's voices in the community and faces too. And this session is going to talk about responses to the issues of poverty, hunger, vaccine inequality, and human rights that were raised by the members from the different communities in the first session. So I will introduce the three speakers and the panel members from this on this panel, and then they will carry on with their reactions. Okay, let me introduce from an honorable member of parliament from India, Dr. Amar Patnaik. Before becoming an MP, Dr. Patnaik had long career in civil service and is a former CAG official. He was also associated with the United Nations and the World Bank for global external audit assignments. He has a bachelor's degree in physics from St. Stephen's College at Delhi University, a master's degree in public management from Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore, and the Kennedy School of Government from Harvard University in the US. He also studied at the London School of Economics, and he has recently authored a book called Pandemic Disruptions and Audacious Lessons in Governance. So we like to welcome you. And then I'll continue with the introduction. If you don't mind, Dr. Patnaik, I will just go ahead with introducing another honorable member of parliament, this time from Bangladesh, Ms. Aroma Dutta, who is a member of parliament, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, a social and human rights activist, and the first woman in civil society leader in parliament, and a voice for women and the minorities. Welcome, MP Aroma Dutta. And then I will continue on with the introduction. Our next speaker is Ms. Hitomi Rankine, Environmental Affairs Officer of the UN ESCAP. We have worked with Hitomi in many of the APFSD meetings that we have had. Hitomi is an environmental affairs officer with ESCAP and with over 20 years of experience in policy advocacy and working with government and other stakeholders for sustainable development in Asia and the Pacific and in Latin America and the Caribbean. Her most recent work has focused on environmental governance, human rights, and stakeholder engagement and approaches that help governments to deal with complexity, including the application of behavioral sciences and transformative foresight. So welcome to the three members of the panel. Let's give them a round of applause virtually. And I'd like to give the floor now to Dr. Amar Patnaik. You have the floor, Honorable MP Patnaik. You have 8 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky. And thank you so much to the GCAP for inviting me to speak on this occasion. It's an extremely important consultation process, I would say, and not just a one-off affair, because it's a never-ending issue in most part of the globe, and Southeast Asia in particular, because it houses the maximum number of people. You know, I have heard in parts to the reactions from different parts of the world to the very concerning question of inequity in our society, in their societies as well. When we talk about poverty, I have, as a member of parliament, always believed, and I've also explained this in my book, that poverty is generally perceived to be an economic metric, but I think it goes far beyond that, because this economic poverty or economic inequality comes out of maybe several factors. It could be historical injustice due to societal inequities, due to cultural inequities, due to gender inequities, could be due to environmental inequities, particular group of people in a place which is resource deficient, and therefore they have not been traditionally able to acquire assets. So when we look at poverty, my take is, and this is what I always say everywhere, is that we have to look beyond income inequity and wealth inequity and go into the deeper structural issues of societal inequity or social inequity, cultural inequity, gender inequity, and at a later date into opportunities inequity as well. So this makes it very complex and very difficult to handle. And this was at the root of the crisis that we saw in terms of vaccine inequity during the pandemic, and which continues even till now. And it doesn't really remains confined to communities. It has, as you would have seen, has gone beyond communities into countries. There is vaccine inequity between countries, between continents, and between communities within the country, between states within the country. But what is at the root of this vaccine inequity is that it is the poor who always suffer, poor who bear the brunt of any kind of inequity, any kind of calamity, any kind of disaster. So when I heard she speak about the vaccine inequity, the slavery issue, which Mr. Daniel was talking about, I am reminded of the fact that a large portion of this inequity is historical, and it comes from historical biases. These have to be addressed if we have to address the larger issue of inequity, and whether it is income inequity translated in terms of poverty, vaccine inequity, human rights inequity, or gender inequity, or in any kind of form. So that's one point which I wanted to make. The implication of this is what we saw, that let's say in Africa, even the first dose has not been given to 3% or probably 4% of people, whereas the advanced countries have registered on an average about 67 to 68% of the vaccine. Now, so the way this was mitigated in India, which was done phenomenally well in vaccine administration, is because we involved the communities. We involved the communities, we took them into confidence, and the National Malaria Eradication Program's entire framework, which was available, was administered. So I would say that unless and until the issue of inequity has been addressed across the board in all the government schemes, in all our approaches towards development, a silo kind of one scheme approach will not work, because there would be no systems in place. The human resource involved would be biased themselves. The second point which I wanted to make is the fact that the hunger, the food inequity that is arising is also because of the fact that the distribution of food doesn't take place in the right way or to the targeted community whenever there is a disaster. It is captured by the elite. And unless there is a system, there's a policy, there is a government intervention which ensures that the poor, the disadvantaged, the vulnerable, the children, the women, they actually get this. So this is very important, that India is ranking very poorly in the hunger index, but we produce surplus of food grains. So it is basically a distributional inequity, and this can be easily addressed through policy, and this can be done only if you take people into confidence, you take communities into confidence, the inclusive development that one talks about has to ensure that the planning comes from bottom up, the administration of the scheme comes from bottom up, and also most importantly, the ownership over the entire scheme is by the community themselves. In some situations like a pandemic, in some situations like a disaster, people believe that if it is a top-down approach, it will work better. But Orissa has shown the way where community resilience to fight a disaster, natural disaster in the form of a cyclone or a flood, was capitalized, was leveraged by the state government to even handle the pandemic, which was a different kind of disaster, but the community took ownership. And that is what is more important. So in all our activities, this is the message that I would like to give, and this is what I say in the parliament all the time, is the fact that it is not sufficient to pay lip service to say that community should be involved, a community should be consulted. But this process of consultation cannot be one way. It has to be a two-way process, and the decision making should be left to the community. Decision making should be left to the community to decide which house to go first, which subsection to go first. And that is how, when we involved the women's self-help groups in Orissa, we could distribute the masks and food grade and cooked food to the destitutes who couldn't even cook food much faster than the government machinery by using our women's self-help groups. So I think the ingenious method of removing inequity in our society will have to be to go to the root cause of the problem, which could be societal, which could be cultural, and that can be done only over a long period of time. It has more to do with taking the communities into confidence, building convening activities, building institutional champions, rather than putting it down only through the government. Not to say that the government will not do anything. Government will still have to build the climate, the environment for having this convening, for giving voice to the community and giving them the power to decide, which often doesn't happen. And that is why I think this whole problem is there. And lastly, I would say that in this age of technology, where technology is actually breaking barriers, is technically breaking many barriers which were there earlier and which was perpetuating inequity, we should be using that technology. We should make the communities at the grassroots level technology literate, digitally literate, so that they can make use of it to break some of the structural barriers, societal entrenched power structures which were there earlier and which was depriving them of getting their rights fully, and to use this technology to get these rights. Because even if the courts say that almost everything that is mentioned here is almost a part of right to life now, but the courts can only say it. The implementation will remain on the government. And therefore, the time through these organizations, through your organization like the GCAP, the idea would be to slowly perpetuate the idea of using technology in a large scale to, by building digital literacy, to seize this power from the people who are the advantaged, and that cannot be denied to them. So this is a very structural shift that will require to be done, and that might actually result in removing some of this. For example, the vaccine inequity in India, to a large extent, this has been solved because of using the CoWIN application, where anybody could register and go and stand in a line and take the vaccine. Whereas in somewhere else, you will probably have to register and then stand in a queue. Then someone will say that this person is more important than the other and take the vaccine. So I think these are some of the important issues that I would like to lay down as the root of the poverty and the hunger and the vaccine inequity that has been talked about. In fact, almost everything is now being read into the right to life by our constitution, by our Supreme Court, and therefore this right-based approach will only work. And for that, we have to empower these communities more, and sometimes, and more importantly, by using technology. These are my initial comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patnaik. In sum, I'd like to say that you're giving importance to community consultations And in all these humanitarian efforts by both government and communities are very important issues to break the systemic barriers that are already existing, and that inclusion using the technology is a very important means by which people can actually participate and be able to solve their own problems more effectively. So thank you for your intervention. May we hear now from MP Arumaduta? You are muted. Please unmute yourself. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to participate in this very critical strategic dialogue organized by GCAP on this very pertinent issue, which I think has been addressed in a very right time. I thank you, Becky, and also Pradeep, for bringing up this dialogue. So just before the event meeting from Asia Pacific, I think I just was about to echo about what Mr. Dr. Amar Satyanayake mentioned about the community empowerment. I think that is the major focus which needs to be taken into consideration for any development which addresses all the indexes of SDGs. We are talking about also that how we can translate our development paradigms in line with the SDGs. Given the context, I would say definitely we are all being affected by COVID. Whole world has been affected, but I think Asia is one of the big hub where COVID has made a major disaster in the area of economic growth, because 2 long years had refrained the whole of Asia and Pacific from food production, agriculture production. So this is a crucial issue which we are not, if we don't take it up right now, because we can hear the footsteps of food crisis, because the whole world also has been affected, and we have to address this issue very fast, because this is going to hit the poorest of the poor and the community who cannot have access to, nutrient food. Forget about nutrient food, the basic food. So it is very important issue. I think we have to, bring into consideration and have a joint solidarity to address this issue at UN, that what is the next step? What is the strategy which they should come up, and also within Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific, that the preparation for managing this food crisis and hunger. I would also mention here that in Bangladesh, regarding vaccine, our Prime Minister, Honorable Sheikh Hasina, has done a magical performance here, and she has received this vaccine award by Gavi, and every single person, from a rickshaw puller to the president, had access to vaccine, and there was no discrimination. And this is a classic example of how you can actually address the issue of equity. And if this can be done, we also can do other issues, resolve other issues in a larger scale. And definitely, the most affected group from COVID were the girls, the young girls, and the dropouts. Now what we do? The dropout of girl children and violence and early marriage, I think another major issue, and this is something which needs to be addressed, and we need to actually come up with some strategies together so that we can raise funds, we can develop some particular specific program and strategies and policies to combat this huge gap, the girls who are missing from this educational map. And of course, that is connected with violence against women. And this is something which we also need to address, that because of the economic trend had gone down, so violence against women also has increased because women were in the economic sector, like women were instrumental in the government sector, and the government market also has gone down. And it is the same for, I think, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, because and Bangladesh, because this group of countries were the big hubs for, I mean, government, and the government workers were almost 80% were women. So I am quite alarmed with this situation, where I think we need to put our heads together so that we actually look into this coming economic crisis and equity, how to actually resolve this issue. And what is next after SDGs? I mean, these are all SDGs are words. Is it only words, or is it to, I mean, come up with crunching numbers, or we have to think about the process and policies for combating the coming crisis, which is a crucial, very, very crucial for all of us. The other issue, I think, has been raised by Dr. Patnaik about which I also, because Bangladesh is one of the largest countries who actually are providing human resources to different countries, and all these demands are going down. So the market from human resources and from market economy, we are now, I mean, facing some serious problems, which is something which I think GCAP can raise, and I think we all should be putting our heads together, and we should be having a joint alliance, and to come up with a platform so that we can take this issue, just not the other, I mean, European countries and the countries from the North America. The other final issue I would like to touch about is the Ukraine war. This war has affected all of us because of the rising oil, and which it is all very connected with one another. So because of this, I mean, rising prices, our agricultural production has gone down, because the prices for diesel and for agriculture, other related products has been affected, severely affected. And this is something which the government alone cannot do. So we also need to think that all governments, and as member of parliament, we are in a position to take it up so that we can actually work out a strategy for next 25 years. Because this has created a big havoc and created a big damage. And of course, when it was an issue, when we were going into the actually marching ahead with the development, particularly countries from Asia Pacific, when we were marching on the upward scale, now all of a sudden we got stranded, and now we are going down. But who are affected? The community people. And I think this is something which will affect, I mean, the political process also, because we need peace, we need harmony, we need governance, And all of these are interrelated and interconnected. And to address these issues, we must get prepared immediately and start with some very important policy and very important policies so that we can easily take up and then demand for how we address and put this agenda, top of the agenda in UN, and work out strategies for Asia Pacific and the countries all over the world. And I think definitely empowerment of women, empowerment of the community, and empowerment of Asia Pacific group who can bring solution, because we are the one who does face more struggle, and we are the one who are the best challenge takers. And I think I seriously consider that GCAP can address these issues, and we will be very much, interested, and we would like to contribute to this issue and this very, very critical issue, that how we address this issue of poverty, hunger, inequality, and human rights, because these indexes are affecting us. But as I'm very optimistic person, we have done it, and we have absolutely shown to the world that Bangladesh can do it. Bangladesh can do it, and so all the countries who have been very much involved in this process of addressing the issue of inequality to bring equity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aroma Duta. Thank you for emphasizing the solidarity that we all need in Asia Pacific to be able to overcome all these problems of inequality, poverty, access to vaccines, and the social protection that we all need as policies that are needed to be put up in the different states where we are in, and the role of the MPs as being able to understand the interconnectedness of all this, and work and hoping to work with you as well. So thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to ask Hitomi to please say your action on the different issues raised by the earlier panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky. Thank you so much, Pradeep. Thank you so much to the GCAP team for this invitation today. And thank you so much to the previous speakers who've provided really important food for thought for this really important assembly. With your permission, I would like to share some slides just to be able to make my messages clear for everyone in the room. So let me just proceed quickly. I know we're short on time. Yeah. Okay. Right. Apologies, I can't seem to get this slide to show. I'll just talk through. Okay. So I work with the Environment and Development Division of ESCAP, and not many of you who know our work with ESCAP and Sustainable Development Goals will know that. But at the basis, our work focuses in the Environment and Development Division on the interface between people, development, and the environment. And why is this important, right? We have been hearing about the need to address structural inequality, and I want to point to access to a healthy environment as being fundamental for addressing poverty and inequality, and in fact, defining the picture of inequality in any country. Because if you look at the healthy environment, you're talking about food security, livelihood security, you're talking about access to clean water, you're talking about conditions which make for strong health, right? And we're talking about human security when we're talking about abundant environmental resources, right? We know that conflict and resources and land grabs are really, really very much linked to resource constraints, right? Which are themselves triggered when there's overexploitation. So I want to point out and really stress that a healthy environment is fundamental for addressing poverty and inequality, and that's where I start. The environmental SDGs are really the furthest behind among all of the SDGs. Maybe there is a link to the general governance conditions in the region, but this is the condition that we find ourselves in. And when we look at intersectionality, which we have heard a lot about today, whether we're looking at gender, caste, and other types of intersectionality, we have to think about how does this impact on the access to resources and therefore the implications for poverty and inequality and coming out of these traps, right? Now, environmental rights include access to participation in public affairs and participation in decision-making processes with respect to the environmental issues and to justice, right, with respect to environmental rights. And the question is, how do we assert these rights so as to be able to change the structural challenges that we face with respect to poverty, right, in this region? So in our work at ESCAP, we conducted a participatory foresight exercise, and this required us to work with stakeholders to define some big drivers which are going to define the relationship between environment and development in this region. And with a particular impact, look at the impact on people, right? So the first one that we identified was the rise of global consciousness. Now, this was seen as largely positive, right? We have a positive, nature positive political kind of interest, right? And we see young people being involved in environmental issues, and we see quite a lot of interest and good support, something which I dreamed of 20 years ago. It's happening now. But at the same time, we see that there's some perverse incentives being developed, and we see that in fact some of the overseas investment in land is driven by access to environmental goods and services, including ecosystem services. So you have the rise of global consciousness defining the way in which environmental access is going forward, right? And then we think another big ticket driver that we looked at was the evolving food systems, right? Very important to look at these because you have the rise of agribusiness and industrial agriculture and evolving food systems relating to changing consumption patterns and economic incentives, which change the access to land, right? We know that a majority of farmers in this region are smallholders. What does this mean for their access to resources? An important question. A third big ticket driver that we looked at in our foresight work is looking at the demand for natural resources and the shifts in ownership. Because when you have an economy which is focusing on markets, right, and providing access through the market, you have a really strong potential, and it's ongoing, for changes and shifts in ownership, which are not going to favor those most left behind, right? So we need to really look at how this demand for natural resources and how it's impacting the shifts in ownership, right? We need to look also at the changes in the rural-urban dynamics, right? We heard a lot about migration being a driver for some of the negative situations that we do find people in today. Very important driver, and climate change and water scarcity are two important drivers of these changes in rural-urban dynamics that we see in the region. And finally, environmental governance as a big trend, right? We need to really look at what are the solutions that are being advocated through climate responses. What does it mean when we want to secure ecosystem services? And how does the market interface with the traditional means of access to resources, right? So 5 big ticket drivers on environmental development in this region that we need to be aware of as we go forward and sharpen our advocacy, right? Now, civic education is an essential response, and why do I say this, right? Now, to be able to change the picture in relation to these big ticket drivers so that structural factors relating to inequality are shifted, we need to be able to equip people to assert their rights, right? Their rights to participation in public life and their rights to environmental health, right? And ESCAP did a really small survey of participants in the APFSD, and we looked at the different conditions for public participation. And the one which survey respondents thought were most lacking was not the legislative mandate. It was not about the broad access to technology. It was not about safe, accessible spaces, right? It wasn't about a trustworthy or fact-based media. The need for robust civic education was identified as the biggest requirement for moving forward on public participation, okay, in Asia and the Pacific. Okay. Now, coming back to the present, that survey was some time ago. We are looking to the future as ESCAP to understand how can we support the Secretary General's effort to reinvigorate multilateralism, especially on environment and development issues. So we issued another survey, and this survey showed us that leaders in this region think that multilateralism is important and it is essential for making progress on environment and development challenges in the region, right? And we asked the respondents to look at 6 different measures for moving forward to reinvigorate cooperation. And the 2 measures which found the biggest resonance with those who answered the survey was, first of all, strengthening accountability measures, including mutual accountability. And the second one was information sharing, transparency, and evidence for action. So these are 2 important ways to sharpen our focus on advocacy in multilateral forums so that we can support people to assert rights towards moving towards a healthy environment. And using this information from the survey, we identified a 5-part framework for sharpening advocacy and action for inclusive, networked, and effective multilateralism. And at the center of this framework is solidarity, right? It's really important for civil society to understand or to define what does solidarity mean, right? Which issues and which groups are we needing to push for greater solidarity in when we're talking about multilateral spaces, especially around those related to environmental development challenges in the region, right? What data, when we talk about information and data sharing, what data for whom and for what purposes, right? We need to think about that. The third element was accountability measures, right? What accountability measures are we looking for and what kinds of platforms? Who should be part of these platforms, right? And what kinds of indicators will support accountability? The 4th element of this framework was economic system and financing interventions, right? Which economic system and financing interventions do we want to see as civil society? It's really important to define, regardless of which multilateral context we're working with. And the final one is coordinated network and participatory action. And GCAP has been playing a really important role in this regard. And how do we take these lessons learned from GCAP as a network? And how do we bring the influence to multilateral organizations and multilateral arrangements, which are going to make a difference in the outcomes, is a key question for civil society advocacy going forward. So I'll stop here and thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Hitomi. Your presentation is very enlightening. I am very happy to see you again, at least, and for you to actually emphasize the 5 elements that you said that were results of your study, because I think this is what we have been fighting for the longest time, and we have been calling for the longest time in GCAP. And solidarity is something has been resonating. A theme that has been resonating in our advocacies for the longest time. And we know that accountability measures are very important for governments, not only to listen to us, but also for services to be delivered to us, not only for transparency, but also for their accountability to public funds. And then it's very important also for us to start thinking about how we can assert our spaces for more participatory action in all spaces that we can occupy. And we're looking forward to working through the reforms that are being started at the United Nations. And we look forward to participating as well in the discussions on this kind of multilateralism that has to be developed in all of the aspects of the work, whether regional, whether global, and at the UN level. Thank you very much. This ends of my session. I'd like to thank again the speakers, MP Patnaik from India, Ms. Aroma Dutta from Bangladesh, and Hitomi Rankine. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the next session.
Thank you. Thank you, Becky. Thank you. We'll go to the next breakout session. I'll hand it over to Anselmo Lee, the APST coordinator, to moderate the group breakout session, and also the presentation onwards. We have very less time, 25 minutes. Anselmo, you will also have Rose, who can explain the technicalities. Yeah, over to you, Anselmo. Rose, can you unmute Anselmo? Yeah, hi. Anselmo, you have to unmute.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Anselmo Lee, the coordinator of APS, Asia Civil Society Partnership for Sustainable Development. I have a very challenging task of moderating the session with a very, very limited time. So I want to appeal to all the moderators of 5 thematic discussion. As we see in the program, we have a right to health, food, social protection, democracy, climate justice. But originally we are supposed to have 20 minutes, but we have to reduce to 15 minutes. And also presentation of your results, instead of 4 minutes, 2 minutes. Because as you know, right after our session, there's a European Regional Assembly. They are starting very soon. So we have to evacuate before they start. So can we invite you to go to the groups? Because we have 5 groups.
Yes, so I can just quickly explain the breakout rooms. So
Yeah.
I'm going to start them now, and as Anselmo said, they all have different themes. So it'll pop up on your screen and you can select which one you want to go into, and Zoom should just automatically take you there. And if anyone's having difficulty with joining the breakout room, please just write in the chat what one you want to be in and I can assign you. So I'm going to start them now.
Rose, can we assign moderators and rapporteur to respective groups? Is that possible?
Everyone will be able to talk in all the breakout rooms. So once you're in there, just the people that are moderators and rapporteurs can just identify themselves, and then they don't need to be hosts or anything.
So yeah, moderators and rapporteurs, kindly take note of your group and please be in that group. Yeah, next 15 minutes. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Is there an option of choosing to go to which breakaway? I'm not able to see.
Which one do you want to be in?
No, I think I'll go to the first group, but if you can, that's not coming forth.
It's not coming up for you. That's probably because you are a co-host. Participant.
Okay.
What room do you want to be in?
Actually, I don't see any options there. I mean, through which the participants go to breakout rooms.
Because they are co-hosts. Maybe you can close all co-hosts, excluding me. I can be assigned to the vaccine group, the first group.
Yeah, I am still here. So we have to. I'll just shut it then. Yeah. Pradeep.
Because
the reason
we
that
are not two groups. It's okay, we can sit here. No? And this is Pradeep, can you hear me? We are not
Yes.
assigned it.
Okay.
This here. So it's okay.
the reason that you're not assigned is because sorry, I'm just going to close this.
Okay, welcome back to the main session. So we are very pressed with the time. So let me invite one by one to present 1 or 2 minutes. Why don't you write down the keyword in terms of summary instead of explaining about what has been discussed. So let me begin with the first one, session, group 1, breakout session. Who is a moderator? Could you please right to health as a lens is a rapporteur.
Yes, can you hear me well?
Oh, yes, yes. Okay.
Yes, so my name is Lance Espacio. I'm from the People's Vaccine Alliance in Asia, and I am reporting on behalf of the first group on health. So I'll just share with you first set of things is the reflections on the concerns in respect to the right to health. So first is the trade and intellectual property barriers to the production of vaccines, tests, and treatments in relation to the COVID disease. Another barrier is marginalized groups. We saw during the pandemic had less access to basic services, for example, groups who are drug dependents, LGBTQ plus people, and Dalits and women, for example. Thirdly, we also reflected on not only the concerns, but also the success stories. No, we've seen some who have worked in India. What has worked the most is when the communities are involved, when, for example, in India, for example, the primary healthcare systems are really strengthened when health is most accessible to the people on the ground.
Thank you very much. It's 1 minute up. So 1 minute up. Thank you very much. Could you please write down the rest in the chat box? Okay, sorry. Let's go to the next one, Group B, food, hunger, poverty crisis. Aditi Anand from Vadanatodo.
So Aditi, nobody joined actually. Just for 5 minutes, we had a discussion. So Ruvan, are you here?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you
Hi.
just
Hi,
quickly say, we only had time to discuss Sri Lanka. So Ruvan, if you can go ahead.
Yes.
I'm here.
Bina, thanks for your brief and presentation. It's really interesting and encouraging for us to to move forward in a better way. Thank you so much, Bina.
Okay, thank you. Then let's go to the Group 3, the Universal Social Protection. The rapporteur is, I think, Praman, right? Praman from SAPE. You have 1 minute.
Yeah, hi everyone. We think that there was technical problem. So Abdul, the moderator, and myself, we were waiting for the participants to join, but later on Giab joined. So mostly three of us discussed, and 3 other participants also joined at the end. So we discussed that universal social protection is the real solution to the current crisis that we are facing. The issue of universalization or targeted approach providing social protection to the deserving people was also discussed. Because of the intervention from the international financial institutions, states are prohibited to invest more on the social protection programs in most of the countries. So it should be.
Thank you very much. You need to wind up 1 minute or per month. The rest, please write down in the chat box. Okay. Let's go to the democracy, civic space, human rights. Moderator Samoy from CCC. You have 1 minute, please.
Hi everyone. My name is Mori from CCC. Actually, our group started the discussion late because the moderator is not here. But later on, Anselmo jumped in and we started discussion. So our group, we raised several points of the concern regarding the civic space and advocacy. First one is the issue of the right of women with disability, the excluding youth participation in the decision-making process, and the electoral authoritarianism, and the lack of accountability from the elected authority, and the lack of civic education. And the demand to address the above issue first is the budget support, collaboration and partnership in order to bring the inclusive society and to continue the civic education in order to address and expand the civic space. So that all from my group.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to group 5, the climate justice. The Arjun Bhattari from NFN Nepal, and also Kiran Shrestha. Hello, group 5.
Anselmo, I think Arjun did not join us. And Kiran, are you there? Can you report? Or then in that case, if you cannot, then I will request Ali Jilani to report from our group.
Okay, anyone from the group? Yeah. We have only 1 minute.
Hi, Ali, so thanks.
So we basically discussed the absence of regional mechanisms vis-a-vis, multilateral mechanisms for climate governance, as well as mobilizing resolve, across different factions in terms of, education, in terms of climate action, as well as the issues concerning, governance at the regional as well as sub-regional level. We also discussed some of the issues concerning investor-state dispute settlement as an attempt to restrict, the policy space of states, and which is why, again, reinforcing the need for a multilateral mechanism to help individual countries mobilize that. We also discussed, the environmental rights of people and the biodiversity loss related issues. Also some of the climate change and disasters that we've had in the region.
Okay, thank you very much. Could you please write down your, the main points of your discussion in the chat box so that we can collect all of them. So, so now I'd like to invite Jia Rehman from Abad Foundation, Pakistan, to give the vote of thanks before we close. Jia, you have a 1 minute floor, please.
Thank you very much indeed. And I really thank all the reporters and moderators and the speakers for giving their insightful thoughts and discussions. It was wonderful hearing all of you. Two things that I would like to highlight in 1 minute. One is that we hope that there will be a regional people's charter of demand that may be prepared and shared with everybody towards the end of this global assembly and the regional assembly processes. And we will also collect information from the national assemblies that are being organized across the globe. The second thing is that we really appreciate that the civil society has been discussing all these very pertinent issues. But at the same time, we have observed that the rights-based organizations are diminishing across the world. And this agenda, which we are talking today since morning, cannot be addressed truly until unless we have a strong rights-based institutions available at the grassroots level, at the regional level, and at the global level. I can witness that like 2 decades back, we were quite strong. We had a great push to the governments towards our agendas, towards pro-people, rights-based agendas.
Okay, Jia, can you wind up, please? Jia, 1 minute up already. We need to close now.
Yeah, it's okay. And I think we also need to minimize that disconnection between the civil society and the states. Until unless we go into the dialogues with them with a great push and power with the civil society, we will not be succeeding in our agendas and bringing our rights-based agendas on table.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Jia. Thank you for your vote of thanks. Now, let me invite Pradeep to make a closing remark. Pradeep,
thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you, colleagues. No more remarks. All the moderators and the rapporteurs of the groups are requested to send me the demands and issues that will be compiled in form of a Asia demand charter. But let us take whatever demand have been shared in, let us take them and approve her from the group. We'll eventually approve the final draft, but we have to approve it. This is a formality we have to complete because this will go into the process of global declaration making. If it is yes, kindly say yes. So we close this. Over to Ingo to take it forward for the Europe Assembly. Thanks.